Everyone ready? All right, we are on the record in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation of Andrew Lewis Warren, being heard before the Board of Behavioral Sciences, OAH case number 2020-020-013, and agency case number 2002-170-00596. My name is Sean Gavin. I'm the administrative law judge presiding over this matter. Can I take the appearances of the parties, starting with counsel?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Patricia Weber-Heim, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Government Code Section 11522.
All right, thank you. Mr. Warren? Just say who you are.
Andrew Lewis Warren.
All right. Make sure that when you speak directly into the microphone and slowly enough that people can hear you. You're proceeding today without the assistance of counsel, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. As I said at the outset, I need the board members to identify themselves, starting with the furthest on my left.
Jonathan Maddox, MFT member.
Ross Ehrlich.
Christina Wong. Leah Brew.
Wendy Strack.
Max Disposti.
Betty Connolly.
Deborah Brown.
John Sovek.
All right, thank you. It's been previously established that these members constitute a quorum. Mr. Warren, you have sat through the morning session of 3 different petitions, and you heard my comments at the outset of today. But so your record is clear. Your proceeding or your petition will proceed as follows. Ms. Heim will present the petition packet to the board to orient them as to the previous jurisdictional history. Then I'll give you a chance to make any statements that you'd like to make or submit any exhibits. It's my understanding you have one exhibit that has not previously been attached to your petition. I've marked that as Exhibit A, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. After you've testified and presented your evidence, I'll have Ms. Heim question you, followed by questions from the board members. Any questions about the procedure?
No.
All right, Ms. Heim, are you ready to begin?
Yes, thank you.
All right, you may.
Just like to mark for identification and offer into evidence as Exhibit 1, the original petition packet with its accompanying documents. The board members and petitioner have been provided a copy of this same set of documents, and they consist of the following: the petition for early termination of probation, dated June 30th, 2019, and they include attachments of a letter of reference from Francisco Carrillo, who is an LCSW clinical supervisor with the Volunteers of America, Greater Los Angeles area. This letter is dated July 1st, 2019. There is a letter of reference from Alicia McGowan, LCSW LAADC, with the Recovery Now, Inc. program, dated July 2nd, 2019. There's also the March 19th, 2019 order granting petitioners Penal Code Section 1203.4 petition for the dismissal of his criminal matter entitled People v. Andrew Lewis Warren, San Diego County Superior Court Case number M as in Mary 186768. This is followed by the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order, which was effective October 13th, 2017. This order granted petitioner's registration as an associate clinical social worker, which was immediately revoked, and this placed petitioner on 4 years probation with terms and conditions. This also included the attached statement of issues for case number 200-2017-000-596, dated May 22nd, 2017. This is followed by the notice of hearing to petitioner, which is dated February 3rd, 2020, and the registration and license history certification for petitioner for his associate clinical social worker registration number ASW 79887. At this time, I would like to offer this packet into evidence as Exhibit 1.
Mr. Warren, were you able to follow along with the documents that Ms. Heim walked us through?
Yes.
Do you have any objection to the board considering any of those documents as evidence in this case?
No.
Exhibit 1 will be admitted without objection. Anything else at this time, Ms. Heim?
Thank you. At this time, I would like to present a summary of petitioner's discipline history with the board and his probation compliance.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Petitioner was issued an Associate Clinical Social Worker registration on or about October 13th, 2017. On July 22nd, 2014, Mr. Warren was convicted of a misdemeanor DUI. A statement of issues was filed on May 22nd, 2017, and the board adopted the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order, which immediately revoked, stayed, and placed the petitioner on probation for 4 years with optional and standard terms and conditions effective October 13th, 2017. Said registration was tolled from January 18th, 2019 through March 28th, 2019, and again from November 2nd, 2019 to December 12th, 2019. The expected end date of probation is January 29th, 2022. There is no history of modification of probation, and petitioner is requesting early termination of probation and is not represented by an attorney. He completed his psychological evaluation on April 23rd, 2018, and was deemed safe to practice with no recommendations. Petitioner is fully compliant with the psychotherapy quarterly reports, as well as the dependency support program. He completed remedial education August 28th, 2018. He is fully compliant with biological fluid testing and the standard terms and conditions, including quarterly reports and reimbursement costs. At this time, I will reserve questioning until after the petitioner's statement.
All right, thank you, Ms. Heim. Mr. Warren, would you like to testify on your own behalf?
Yes.
I'll have you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, now would be the time for you to let the board know why you think it should grant your petition, keeping in mind it's already had the opportunity to review the contents of the petition, and it's particularly interested in any rehabilitation you might demonstrate. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I prepared a statement. I edited it a little bit just based on the previous hearings, and so there will be some pauses to decipher some of my handwriting.
Okay,
from
so
that. So
let me just interrupt.
Yeah.
If you're going to read it, just make sure that you keep the pace slow enough that the court reporter can understand what you're saying.
I will.
Okay.
Thank you for taking your time and attention. I'm here respectfully to ask your consideration to grant our early termination from probation. I've maintained compliance with my probation over 2 years, and from what I share here today, with the probation compliance and what I share today, that I am fit for practice, not a detriment to public safety, and this will not, the conviction that led to my probation will not occur again. In that time, and actually time before my probation, I've been able to gain insight about factors that involved and led to my arrest and conviction. I learned a lot about myself, and importantly, I've applied what I've learned and taken better care of myself to be more honest with myself. It's been a continuous 5.5 year post-mortem. What's been most valuable to me in my rehabilitation has been my time in therapy. I was able to take a detailed exploration of my alcohol use and considered how drinking patterns were formed, and reinforced, and how they changed. So I'm going to share that. So I start in my formative years, and the impact of the modeling of alcohol use and influenced my attitude toward alcohol use. There was a cultural influence, including family traditions. My father was a naval officer, and he hosted parties, and I observed men and women that I admired drinking, singing, playing the guitar, eating Filipino food, and I couldn't wait to do the same. This was done. There wasn't any kind of trauma around this. It was done, from what I observed, responsibly. I didn't have any family trauma around alcohol. I would say that's in college. A binge drinking pattern was cultivated and reinforced. I was a college football player, but within my peer groups, and also kind of considering kind of masculine hierarchies. There was, in certain groups, including mine, there was some cultural capital in being able to chug to drink 8 beers and tell a story, a great story, and keep your wits about you. And you could rise to high tiers of that kind of masculine hierarchy, and I bought into that. I also romanticize things like people like Jack Kerouac, or that some kind of enlightenment could be found in a binge and dancing around a fire with my friends, but no enlightenment was found. I was able to identify these kind of automatic environmental pairings, cues related to alcohol use, such as celebrations or making celebrations out of things that aren't, vacationing, sporting events, live music events. These things were paired to me as to be almost automatic that I was going to drink at these. So there's a binge, I think, pattern formed in that, and let me describe that as kind of a restrictive, productive period of time, followed by a binge event. It wasn't always binge, but followed by a drinking or binge event. Let me say that a restrictive, productive period of time, kind of followed by a morally licensed binge or drinking event. Again, sometimes it wasn't binge drinking. I did have the privilege of leisure, and mostly that leisure included alcohol. And this kind of binge pattern carried on for 2 to 3 years after college. And I think at that time, my peers and I drank, and to bond, to problem solve, to be vulnerable, to mourn. There was no, at that time, for our privilege or for other protective factors, there was no significant negative consequences. It didn't impact overtly other facets of my life. I just don't want to minimize it, but that's how the story I say. But in my mid-20s and mid to late 20s, there was kind of a natural disruption to this pattern. Not an event that I can point out, but just kind of natural disruption because of life milestones, maturation, increased responsibility. My frequency and amount of drinking decreased. I was drinking socially, sometimes for weeks, not at all. And then challenging those pairings that I once had, going on vacations, going to events and celebrating without alcohol or without binge drinking. At that time, I would do, okay, I'll skip that. But at the time of my arrest, I was living balanced and enjoying life and living well, taking care of myself. Around the time of my arrest, things were different. I recognized some interpersonal conflict related to anxiety and depression, kind of fed by a loop of stressors of an emerging adult. I was in graduate school at the time. I had a 180-mile round trip to school, 3 nights a week from San Diego to Irvine. There was trauma of social work employment, paraprofessional social work employment. There was anxiety about anxiety about money, career, feeling of fears of inadequacy or incompetency in some of these jobs, comparing myself to my same age peers, having these stressful jobs but still living paycheck to paycheck. And I would say anxiety stole the show, but anxiety and depression are usually on the buddy system. And again, at that time of my arrest, I was using alcohol to mitigate the anxiety. And I was disguising, I think it was kind of disguised in normal social drinking. So that kind of took some growth and some perspective to see. And being kind of licensed again by things are tough, job's tough, I deserve to unwind. There was no self-care involved in this time of the graduate school and the time of my arrest. I was not taking care of myself in the ways that I used to. So therapy, this is things I had to address in therapy, and usually was through CBT in forms of kind of confronting these distorted ideas I had about what made me worthy or valuable, distorting these kind of ruminations that were contributing to that anxiety and depression, to kind of forgive myself, to shift my perspective, have some self-compassion and some gratitude, and be asset-based. It's okay that I didn't become an attorney or physician. Those were things that I was holding as being inadequate, that somehow my job as a social worker wasn't enough. So through therapy, being able to kind of recalibrate, be proud of the hard work that I do. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and it's amazing that the place where people let me in and work with them, and I'm good at it. So I also had to begin taking care of myself, because I wasn't. And for the past 5 years, I've been able to do that. My focus has been health and wellness, and through exercise, through sports, music, hiking, through learning more in my field, and through podcasts and reading and writing. My support has been my wife, my family, and my friends, probably too many friends. And we also, a new baby boy that we welcomed 3 months ago. So being happy and healthy for him is my top priority. Also, my colleagues have been important in that too. Establishing some boundaries as well, and doing things to maintain in a kind of a resilient zone. I still have anxiety, I still have depressive symptoms, but to manage a balanced life, to kind of stay within a resilient zone. And also, I think I said this, but gratitude. I did attend AA meetings. I don't consider myself an alcoholic. I did attend AA meetings. I did not work the steps. I did not work with a sponsor. I found the meetings to be valuable. And some other meetings I went to, faith-based, that were more CBT focused. But the kind of self-introspection and self-honesty, the power of narrative and the power of connection and community, was what I experienced there, and that was valuable, and I can take with me and continue regardless whatever the group was titled. That's the point. And I could find that in any group, I think. So I would continue in therapy. Definitely continue in therapy, maybe bi-monthly if either way. So I think that's it. I might, that's it. Yes. Sorry.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Heim, do you have any follow-up questions?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Some of these I'm just going through.
Okay. Yes, please.
So I first would like to just make sure, do you have any current criminal convictions that the board is unaware of?
No.
Are there any current criminal or civil charges pending against you?
No.
Okay, so just in related to the statement that you were making, you talked a lot about personal factors that you identified, and that you're on probation, and that you're not drinking currently while you're on probation. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So
practicing
if you
abstinence.
were if you were no longer on probation, would you return to a pattern of drinking?
I would continue abstinence from alcohol. If you asked me if I would drink in the future, you know what? You didn't ask that, so I'll just say there's no plan to continue to drink at this time.
So if you were confronted with a family social situation and that was the norm, is that you would be toasting with alcohol, what would you do?
What I've been doing for some time now is just say that I'm not drinking. I found a few strategies. I usually carry a non-alcoholic drink in my hand to prevent that. I stay busy and sometimes do things like play with the children, but it's usually there's kind of an understanding, and if I just say that I'm not drinking, it's usually not very difficult to succumb to any kind of pressure or anything like that. So I just say that I'm not drinking. Yeah.
Thank you. You also talked about identifying anxiety and depression. How in the future or now, how do you handle your stressors? What are your strategies?
My strategies that have been in place and I continue to maintain are a consistent exercise routine. That's been valuable. Also, just therapy itself. There was my social, so my friends, my wife, being with them and being with my family. I read and tend to write. I don't journal, but I write other things. So all those, putting those into place, whatever's accessible to me or whatever I want and feel like doing at that point.
You mentioned therapy. I know that's part of the terms of probation. If you were granted early termination, would you continue with therapy?
Yes. I think what I found most appropriate just for me is bi-monthly therapy.
Thank you. And then regarding the anxiety and depression issues, do you take any medication for that?
No medication.
Okay. And you said no sobriety date.
No.
Okay.
No, like not in recovery in the sense of traditional addiction recovery. I'm in a recovery of a different sense, in a general sense of just doing things to take better care of myself and in doing things to improve my life.
Okay. Do you have, you mentioned a support system, including your wife and friends. Have you identified specific plans for coping with stressors in the future?
Yeah. So specific plans is, I mean, like for stress, it's more like a kind of automatic that I know what things that are some coping mechanisms that work for me. It kind of goes into a kind of an automatic. There seems to be like it's going to start generally with talking to somebody from a friend or a family member, and then engaging in some kind of physical activity. It kind of follows in naturally just kind of follows suit. So those plans are in place. The plans exist, but they don't exist maybe on like a piece of paper. I don't have a stress plan on a document or anything. They are kind of plans I have with myself that my family and friends know that I use.
Thank you. I think you probably have already answered this, but can you specifically lay out why you are asking for your probation to be terminated early?
I'm asking because, like I mentioned before, from the my compliance with probation and from what I've gained and the insight I've gained and the growth I experienced through therapy, and some of the other probation stipulations from just having this time, and which was I was doing before the BBS was involved too. This kind of growth occurred in the therapist room and outside, that I feel strongly that I am fit to provide mental health, social work, clinical social work services, and am not a detriment to public safety, and that it won't happen again from the growth that's happened. And I believe I've demonstrated that.
Thank you. I have nothing further at this time.
Mr. Warren, you had submitted a one-page document, a two-page document from Therese Haviland,
Yes.
dated March 1, 2020. Would you like to tell us about that?
This was just kind of, I asked Terry for a summary of my therapy from our first meeting until now, just because I was told I would be having a hearing. So I asked her to provide a summary that would be appropriate to present to the board regarding my therapy progress. And
All right, the record should reflect I've marked that document as Exhibit A. Ms. Heim, any objection?
No objection.
Exhibit A will be admitted without objection. We turn then to questions from the board, starting on my left.
Afternoon, Mr. Warren. How are you?
I'm great. Good afternoon.
Thank you for coming in.
Yeah.
Just want to say I appreciate how well you articulated your vulnerability and sort of your insight into your emotional world. And a lot of men struggle with doing that,
Yeah.
let alone in front of a board. So I appreciate you sharing that and just really diving into areas of growth and just sort of your experiences sort of growing up and how they've impacted sort of where you are today. So I want to thank you for that. But I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
The first one coming from your petition for early termination, as I look at question number 11, the way you answered it, and it could be just me reading too much into it, but that's what therapists do. It just matter-of-factly says, I was arrested for suspicion of DUI. I was convicted of DUI. And when I read that, it doesn't really hold much responsibility for what actually happened. So maybe could you speak a little bit to the board about sort of
Yes.
the responsibility you're taking for the incident that happened that day?
Absolute responsibility and accountability. I took the wording right out of the court document. That's why there was no suspicion. I was drinking and driving. It was on one of the, I think the petitions from the court, it says, I took the word suspicion from that, kind of right out from that. That's all.
Okay, no, that's a helpful clarification. Yeah. And the reason why I said that was the first sentence says summarize in your own words. So but
Yeah.
that's sufficient. Thank you very much.
So I missed that part.
Oh,
I
that's
think.
fine.
But that's
That happens. Could you speak to us about the reason why your probation was told for 3 months and 10 days? Like, what was the circumstances around that?
Yeah. Yes, I can speak on that. I was working for a harm reduction shelter in Echo Park. We lost our funding. We closed. We did like a staggered. So my last day there was the 17th. I took some time off, and then I was transferred to another program within my agency. And that program, we were contracted by West Los Angeles VA. I had to go through a pro vetting background, so I was not able to work clinically until that happened, and that took several months to be cleared by the VA. So I wasn't able to see clients until March. And then the second one was baby bonding for my child, the November to December.
Okay, thank you. Could you share with the board, so how do you currently socialize? Like, what does that look like? From what you described, sort of both from your upbringing and from sort of your experience in college, that socialization was crosswalked significantly with alcohol use.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering sort of when you go out to socialize now, just what does that look like?
Same things. Same, except without the alcohol.
Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
clarification.
So I have to admit, like I mentioned before, when these things kind of happen naturally to begin to socialize as I got older without alcohol, to go to a baseball game and not have a beer. Those things happened without active kind of mindful effort to do that. So it looks the same to kind of, and of course the probation, excuse me, so everything looks the same without alcohol. So I still go to baseball. I still go to music events. I still do everything that I do. I just don't drink at this. It was when it's, and I still find it enjoyable. That's
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you still engage in a lot of the same social activities, but alcohol is not a part of that process.
yes,
Is that accurate?
correct.
Great. Thank you very much. So I have a question, and it may sound like a judgment, but it's not. So when you got your DUI, you were in graduate school?
Yes.
And so I'm assuming you were a bit older. You may have been in your mid to late 20s at the time. Is that accurate?
31.
You were in your early 30s.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So, okay. I'm going to scratch that question. I'm actually going to scratch that question. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Warren. How are you doing?
Great.
Thank you again for coming in. Thank you for disclosing, as previous board member has stated, some of the issues that you spoke about sometimes are hard for men to talk about, and again, especially in a public setting. So appreciate that and your honesty and your candidness. Let's see. So you did have your conviction expunged, correct?
Yes. The order was March. I think it was signed for dismissal in April.
You know, I really only have one question. I know that you had mentioned about the sort of culture that was, you know, in college, playing football, things like that, sort of nature of the binge nature, the drinking sort of culture. And I know that typically is, and that you talked about, associated with certain events, going, you know, social events, celebrations, things like that, which are still common things that occur in your life. And I was wondering, you know, I know you talked about there's some things you do to sort of remove that, you know, sort of the feeling the need to drink associated with those events. Is there any sort of plan going forward on how you plan to deal with that? Do you anticipate drinking again in the future if when you're off probation, things like that? Or have you thought about that?
Yeah, I do anticipate drinking again. Just not, there's no immediate plans to be off probation and start drinking. I anticipate that I will drink again. I will not drink responsibly. I will drink responsibly again, and socially. I could foresee that in the future. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Okay.
Hi, thanks for waiting and being so patient. And so I do have one quick question.
Yes.
So, in your testimony,
Yeah.
you quickly, mentioned about you don't think that you're an alcoholic.
Yes.
So can you explain a little bit more, why you come to that conclusion? Yeah.
Okay. So I just through, I've had a lot of time to kind of this introspection, because one of the parts of my life that I look at, there's like some details that I left out. So even with the years of college and the years after college, there was a diminishing desire to continue drinking in the patterns that I was drinking within me personally, but I continued to do them to kind of fit the idea of what I thought was expected to me in my peer groups and socially. And so when there were kind of life milestone changes, they were very welcomed by me because there wasn't that social aspect anymore. And that kind of naturally, that pattern just stopped without really just like a mindful, conscious effort to drink in that way and to desire to drink, to have any, to desire to want to drink and to continue in those patterns, in those patterns of alcohol. And also, I also look at those times of even the binge drinking, that binge drinking in itself is not responsible, but the way I was managing myself is that it didn't impact other facets of my life. I was enjoying myself, and well, the night, and for the most part, not the night I got arrested, but for the most part, it was done to a level that was safe for me and the people around me. There and there was also what I consider is that more often there was not binge drinking, and there was also many times and occasions of not drinking at all. So those are the things I consider.
Okay.
Yes.
So you did talk about the pattern.
Yes.
And it sounds like, you were a binge drinker.
Yes.
So how often does the binge drinking happen? What's kind of like the frequency?
Okay, so when I describe a period of the restriction and productivity and not, it would generally be for about a week or two in college, a week or two, and then followed by like a drinking event. So that may be one event or two events. So if I was to give an average frequency, it would probably be 7 to 8 days of no drinking and then a drinking event at that, just to give an average. There was some times that went longer, and then sometimes that would be, yeah.
Well, and especially, you said that, the drinking really is associating with having fun.
Yes.
So, so that's why I'm curious about how much and how frequently you have fun and,
Right,
just have kind of like a normal part of life.
Right.
Yeah.
I had to, in my therapy and psych evaluation, I had to be mindful of a kind of picture I was painting, because I was picture of this when I was talking about myself, I was kind of painting a picture like it was like the movie Animal House. And then when I really think back about it, there was many weekends where, I also did other things, like went to movies and hung out and stayed home and things like that. But I only chronicled one, because that was the focus of, and my convictions related to alcohol, that I was just chronicling the drinking and that behavior. And I want to be fair to myself that there was other things mixed in. It wasn't just that. And I had to remind myself that. And it kind of happened during the evaluation when I was talking about it.
And I'm glad that you talked about that,
Yeah.
because I think those are the very important elements also,
Yeah.
is that your insight of, how, the alcohol has been playing in your life. It's not really just about hanging out with people, because you can, now you're enjoying a clean, a sober lifestyle, and yet, when you associate with people, and what make you that, change your mind, or way back when, why you would have to go with the flow, especially like, Mr. Maddox said, you were in graduate school, you talked about that, you learned about how, the impacts of substance in
Right.
life. And so, I'm also curious. So, so in your therapy,
Yes.
obviously you do a lot, to talk about, like you say, the depression and anxiety.
Yes.
And so do you and your therapist, also look at like, the role of the alcohol in your life?
Oh, yes. Yeah. We definitely more, I would say more in the first year of therapy. That was something that we felt, gosh, I'm sorry, it's like hitting me. I didn't even know. That was a big focus. She, from her experience, I think she had therapy with other people that were in BBS probation, and looking at my conviction, and also was what I wanted to talk about too. It was, I saw that as an opportunity. So yes, we did, especially in the first year. I would say there was a shift from that to kind of like, what are you doing now? What now? What are you, what's life look like for you now? But yes, a lot of looking at the patterns, the modeling of my attitudes about it, that was discussed more in the first year of therapy. But we do still bring it up because when we talk about termination, things like that. So yes.
Thank you very much.
Hi.
Hi.
Binge drinking is a sneaky mistress, right?
Yes.
So it's sneaky binge drinking, right? Because you think I'm drinking fine, and then all of a sudden one day it shifts.
Yes.
So earlier, I guess I'm not clear about your intention to drink it. Was it that in the short term, even after probation, you're not intending to drink, but you may do so one day in the future? Or?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's right now. I have a focus on my health. There's some, and I have a newborn at home, well, a 3-month-old at home, and some health alerts, we'll call them, health scares, but things that I'm prioritizing for myself, that for my wellness and health for my family, that drinking does not support that. So right now, there's no intention to drink if probation was terminated, and to maintain abstaining from alcohol. Yes.
Congratulations on the baby, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah.
So then why start drinking again?
I don't know if I will. I just wanted to say it could. I mean, I just wanted to answer honestly.
Yeah.
I just don't have the I guess the cloak of recovery, the cape of recovery to say that in that form. I there's no plan to. I just think that it could happen because I wanted to be honest. That's all. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you. That's really helpful in understanding. The other area I was thinking about, I was noticing the intersectionality of your ethnic heritage and family celebrations,
Yes.
along with your masculinity and how masculinity is defined, probably both within your ethnic culture and college culture, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how have you redefined your intersections and masculinity? That doesn't include like party dude, athlete, right?
Yeah, that's been a process. I've been lucky. It's part of kind of what I study and teach or do groups on, and kind of disrupting those ideas because they were so heavily the idea that, well, men can't generally be vulnerable or express their emotions unless they're drinking, especially in adolescence with you got in adolescence, you may have, or in college, you didn't tell nice things about your peers or your friends unless you were drinking. The whole sex is awkward. So, drinking then, ideas about that I've been lucky because my peer group, although not in this field, have looked back and said that was all kind of messed up. And let's talk about this, because these ideas did not serve us then, they do not serve us now. And it's impacted our lives negatively, usually. So I've had the benefit of having a peer group that kind of knows this and realizes this, that some of the ideas we were taught of what makes you masculine, what makes you a man are backwards, and they're detrimental to our health. And so that's part of it, just kind of learning more about these ideas. I talk to I just talk to other men. I work with veterans, so I challenge this with them a lot. I try to engage these conversations with them a lot, because then the military adds that extra layer to that too. So we have conversations, and a lot of them can get to a place where, I'm able to help them in that regard. I've heard things. I've heard things, and I've even thought these things myself, that I look back on kind of where those came from throughout my life, and try and just been challenging those and continue to. There's things are still almost a reflex, so it takes time.
Yeah, the dominant discourse is strong,
Yes,
isn't it?
yes.
So it sounds like positive masculinity for you now
Yeah.
is being able to share your feelings,
Right.
being able to be a little bit vulnerable
Yes.
and more honest, and to be able to do so sober.
Sober, right? Yes, and to also another thing for me that's kind of related to I cut this part out was this around the time of grad school of just not delegating anything to anybody. So just I handled everything. I took care of everything. I didn't ask for help for anything. I could do it all and handle it all. That was part of that kind of interpersonal conflict during that time as well. So that's something that I'm continuously trying to challenge and practice.
To undo, that you can ask for help if you need it.
Right.
Yeah. Have you engaged in that behavior recently?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I'm really good at saying no now in the workplace or things taking on, asking for help personally. Yes, not easy, but I've definitely done that and am more comfortable with doing that. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Hi.
Hi.
It sounds like my question, I think, is something that you've sort of touched on a little bit, but I wanted to more directly ask it. You kind of talked about the support system you have now and
Yes.
kind of helping you through social situations where you're not drinking now, where you would have been before. But you also talked about this intersection with anxiety and the self-medication through the alcohol. So
Yeah.
is that same support system helping you through the anxiety as well? And, I'm glad to see that you're looking to continue therapy, but my question was more about the support system for your anxiety as well.
Yeah. I mean, yes. So I'm pretty transparent with my support system, kind of things I'm working on, what I'm going through. So if there's anybody that doesn't kind of respond to that, then I just won't engage with them. For friends, I've had support systems and family members. I've been transparent through the whole process. They're tired of me talking about the BBS. So, but in terms of my mental health and things, I've been transparent with them as well, and kind of tell them what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. And generally it's welcomed and supported. So there isn't anybody kind of adding on to that anxiety or things that add stressors.
No further questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming in. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Can you give me an idea, and perhaps you've already answered this and I just wasn't able to pick it up,
Yeah.
how long the period was in years of your life that you would describe yourself in that particular vein of the binge drinking and the partying? Would you tell us how many years that would have been?
Yeah. So I would say 6.
6?
College and overlapping into after college a few years. Yeah. Until it I don't say the right word for it, until it not dissipated, but until the pattern changed until, 6. Because, 4 years of college and 2 years afterwards.
Okay, so then my next question is, how many years has it been since the end of that 6th year?
23. Oh, it has been 14.
14, okay.
Yeah.
And then my last question is, we have all heard that, you didn't consider yourself, an alcoholic and stuff like that. Would you, though, have considered yourself an alcoholic during that 6-year period?
No, I wouldn't have as I look back on it now, still no, I would have said that I had problems and I was abusing alcohol, yes. I don't think at that time, if you would ask me then, I would have said no, and I probably would have rationalized it into some kind of, it was cultural normative at that time. I was surveying my peers and seeing the same thing for that group of peers, not all people that age. And I think I use that to kind of reinforce it and keep it to go, okay, everybody's doing, that's what I would do at that age.
Right.
Yes, that's what I would have said to myself. But looking back on it, still, I don't think that I would have, because I look back on it now and know that, like I said, I was challenging the pattern within myself, just not able to challenge the pattern in my behavior.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I do have a few questions for you,
Sure.
so there's going to be a little bit of
Yeah.
movement here.
Yeah.
I want to start with something that you said about in grad school, this philosophy of having to handle it all.
Yeah.
And you said you've learned some skills to move beyond that.
Yeah.
And for myself, I remember grad school was a lot. It's really intense.
Yeah.
And yet right now you have a 3-month
Yeah.
old at home.
Yeah.
To me, that's like triple the size of grad school stress. And I'm wondering if you've considered that in your ability to maintain sobriety and push against this binge drinking and taking it all on.
Yeah. So this was something, I was preparing for since I knew he was on the way. So it was, there was work happening in therapy before he came. And there was active efforts to have things in place before he arrived, and also to let things go. And these things happened with an active effort, and things kind of happened naturally when he came. Perspective shifted just when he's there now, and things of, like, let's say, work stressors, the idea of it, and the prioritization of career and work and certain things shifted when he came. So some of that, again, was mindful. Like, I'm not going to stress about my clinical notes as much as I do when he comes, because that's not important. But then things just happen. Like, I'm just finishing my clinical hours, and I have no rush. Or something I would say to myself before maybe would be, you have to submit your hours and get those in, and you need to take your test before May. And there was some kind of value attributed to that, to how I was, and if I was successful, and if I was a worthy, successful person. And now I just don't care as much about that. And again, some of that was actively, mindfully kind of practicing these, challenging these kind of distortive thinkings about what I have to take on and what I have to do. And some of it just happened because I saw a baby, and I just kind of natural.
So getting more specific, I do hear the change in your focus on work and licensing. At the beginning of your answer, you used the word things a lot. Like, what are specific things that are you going to be able to put in place in raising a new child? They're going to help you to manage the anxiety in a way that a binge won't be impulsively brought around.
So we do things, activities as a family together. There's just something, one of the things that I use as a coping mechanism is just being around children itself, in the sense of what it's a signal for me is to, I've heard people say this a lot, it's a cliche, when children kind of teach you how to be in the moment. And with him, I'm in that moment. So there's kind of things we're doing as a family. my wife and I are in Los Angeles, and we're generally, our support system's not there. So there's another direct thing that we're doing is we are moving to San Diego in the summer to be around support system because we can't do it all. So we realize that. So we are going to have help because that makes things more able to manage and me to kind of delegate things out, delegate responsibilities out to make things easier for us.
Okay, thank you. I want to move in a completely different direction now.
Yes, please.
And I'm going to ask you a question. You have every right not to answer.
Yeah.
Could you give me a general idea of how much you weigh?
Yeah, I weigh 270 pounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the report about your DUI, it said your blood alcohol was 0.17 and 0.18. Do you have any idea about how many drinks it took to get to that level?
At the time, I might have been a little bit lighter, but it doesn't matter. I was still a ball of muscle. And so probably 11 or 12. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, because it's this binge drinking piece that is a concern to me as we're trying to look through this today.
Yeah.
We talked about that this changeover for you happened around 31, 32.
Right.
But when we look at binge drinking is such an impulse-based form of alcoholism.
Right.
We do look at two different types, the type that's a daily drinker and then the impulse-based type.
Right.
And like on the CDC, they talk about half of the impulse drinkers, binge drinkers are out there over the age of 35. And so if we're looking at kind of the historical research, I'm concerned that all the great ideas about not binge drinking can be in place, but I'm really concerned about how potentially you're going to manage this idea and if you're aware of how serious a binge drinking addiction actually is.
Right. Yeah. I understand that, and I'm just confident with that because it's not for me. The work is in kind of like a continued maintenance and a life change rather than a kind of a reactive to react and fix something that it's been in a whole kind of like shift about myself and my health in a long-term way, a whole kind of change in lifestyle that, like I said, because of my family and different priorities and changes, that that's how I will proceed and be supported in moving forward and to ensure that it doesn't occur again. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. So,
are there any other ways that impulse control challenges have showed up in your life?
No. Well, I don't have time to be flippant here, but there's there was some Girl Scout cookies on my counter like last week, and no, because they stayed there for a long time. So I don't mean to make, and I'm not trying to make light of that. Food can be an issue and can be part of impulse control and addiction and things like that. But no, I've throughout my life I've never acted impulsively. I've never been in a physical fight in my life. I've never had a verbal altercation with anybody. Did not know other kind of substance, drug issues or anything like that. So no, it's my long answer for no.
So can I ask you one final question
Yes.
then? if in the future, when maybe alcohol comes back into your life, and you get into a situation that has all the triggers for an impulse drinking experience, a binge drinking experience, what are 3 concrete things that you will have in place that will help you to pause that impulse?
Well, just like you're saying, kind of like if I have to be at that point, just a stop and think kind of intervention. If I felt that, something, an active behavior to replace it, if there was a strong feeling to change my setting or to maybe replace it with, if I felt like I want to drink, do I go grab a diet soda? So stop and just kind of like stopping and kind of reflecting, some kind of like a replacement behavior, engaging in conversation with a support system about it or whoever's with me. I think those are 3 things that I could have in place. And if those all felt overwhelming, just kind of removing myself from those cues or triggers.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, any additional questions from any board members? Ms. Heim, anything else?
No, nothing further.
All right. Mr. Warren, anything else you'd like to add at this point?
No.
Okay. In a moment, then, I will ask whether the matter is submitted. And by that, I mean, are you satisfied that you've had a full opportunity to present all argument and evidence on your behalf? Ms.
Yeah.
Heim, is the matter submitted?
Yes, submitted.
Mr. Warren, is the matter submitted?
Yes.
All right, the matter is submitted. The case is closed, and we are off the record.
Thank you.
We're going to take a small break for the court reporter.
So we're going to take a 5-minute break to let the court reporter finish up. And
Okay, we're about to go on the record. You ready? Okay. We are on the record in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation of Katia Weber Mills, being heard before the Board of Behavioral Sciences, OAH case number 2020-020015, and agency case number 200-2017-000-333. My name is Sean Gavin. I'm the administrative law judge presiding over this matter. Can I take the appearances of the parties, starting with counsel?
Good afternoon. Patricia Weber Heim, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Government Code Section 11522.
And Ms. Mills?
Hi, I'm Katia Weber Mills.
You're appearing today without the assistance of counsel, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. As I said at the outset, I'll need the board members to identify themselves, starting with my furthest on my left.
Jonathan Maddox.
Ross Ehrlich.
Christina Wong.
Deb Rue.
Strack.
Betty Connolly.
Deborah Brown.
John Sovek.
All right, thank you. Ms. Mills, you have sat through now 4 petitions and heard my opening remarks prior to going on the record about the procedure that will follow today. But so your record is complete, let me just explain that your petition will proceed as follows. First, I'll invite Ms. Heim to present the petition packet to the board to orient them with the jurisdictional history. Then I will turn it over to you to present any witness testimony or documents you'd like to present, after which I'll give Ms. Heim an opportunity to do any cross-examination she'd like to do, followed by questions from the board. Any questions about the procedure?
No.
All right, Ms. Heim, when you're ready.
Thank you. I would like to first mark for identification and offer into evidence Exhibit 1, which is the original petition packet and its accompanying documents. The board members and petitioner have been provided with a copy of this same exhibit. Exhibit 1 consists of the following. The petition for early termination of probation dated November 20th, 2019, with attachments, including petitioner's typewritten responses to questions 8, 10, 11, 12, and 13, dated November 20th, 2019. Petitioners Attachment 1, which is the documentation of dispositions. Petitioners Attachment 2 includes letters of recommendation, including a letter dated July 16th, 2019 from David Nyland, LCSW, PhD, Professor of Social Work at Sacramento State University, and the Clinical Director of the Gender Health Center. A letter dated July 20th, 2019 from Florence A. Suarez Dabalos, MS LMFT. Letter dated July 26th, 2019 from Val S. Rosavan, LCSW, Clinical Supervisor and Clinical Director of the Turning Point Community Programs in Rancho Cordova, California. Letter dated August 12th, 2019 from Susan Patterson, AA sponsor. Letter dated June 13th, 2016 from Amber Rodriguez, Assistant Program Director. I'm not exactly sure what of, so I will let Ms. Mills clarify who that is if needed. Letter dated June 15th, 2016 from Sarah L. Weston, BS LADC, Recovery Management Professional. Petitioners Attachment 3, which contains personal confidential information, and I would request at this time to file that Attachment 3, under a protective order. This includes rehabilitative efforts and includes information on residential care program and group therapy. Petitioners Exhibit 4, Attachment 4, includes her information on safe practice, including certificates of completion for various continuing education courses. Petitioners Exhibit 5, Attachment 5, consists of miscellaneous supporting documents. The next portion of this Exhibit 1 includes the February 10th, 2017 decision and order after petitioners petitioned for reinstatement of her marriage and family therapist intern registration, which granted petitioners registration as a marriage and family therapist intern following her satisfaction of the necessary education requirements and passage of the California Law and Ethics examination. Following the grant of petitioner's registration, said registration was immediately revoked and petitioner was placed on 5 years probation with terms and conditions. After this is the notice of hearing to petitioner dated February 4th, 2020. And finally, there is the registration history certification for petitioner for her associate marriage and family therapist registration number AMFT 102522, and the associate, is one of those an actual marriage and family? Sorry. I have two AMFTs, is that correct?
One was an MFTI number, and then they gave me an AMFT number.
Okay, so the first one was the AMFT, the one I just
The current
read?
one is 102522.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the one I'm reading now is the Associate Marriage and Family Therapist Intern Registration number AMFT 51698. At this time, I offer this packet into evidence as Exhibit 1, with the exception of Petitioner's Attachment 3, which I am requesting be filed under a protective order.
The difficulty, Ms. Heim, is that when they're all part of the same exhibit, it has to be all or nothing. So what I was suggesting was doing the portions of the petition and the packet that are not confidential separately. So
Yes.
the petition
So-
and the documents behind what's called Exhibit A would be treated as Exhibit 1. The documents behind Exhibit Page B would be treated as Exhibit 2, etc.
Then I would alter my request to introduce into evidence Exhibits 1 with no exceptions, Exhibit 2, which is the petition, under seal. I don't think that's Exhibit. That
Okay.
would be, sorry.
Here's how we're going to do it.
Do
The cover page, the petition without attachments, and the document that is identified as attachment, or pardon me, Exhibit A, all of that is Exhibit 1.
Okay.
Ms. Mills, any objection to Exhibit 1 being considered as evidence in this case?
No objection.
Exhibit 1 is admitted. The documents that are identified behind the page called Exhibit B, those documents are Exhibit 2.
2. Thank
Ms.
you.
Mills, any objection to Exhibit 2?
No objection.
Exhibit 2 is admitted without objection. Pages behind Exhibit C, those are Exhibit 3, and that is the document that Ms. Heim is introducing and seeking to have sealed under protective order. Ms. Mills, any objection to sealing Exhibit 3?
No objection.
Exhibit 3 is admitted, and I find good cause to issue a protective order for it, which I will sign now. Ms. Heim, just ensure that Ms. Mills gets a signed copy before she leaves today.
Thank you.
Exhibit C is admitted pursuant to the protective order. The documents behind Exhibit Tab D, that's Exhibit 4. Ms. Mills, any objection?
No objection.
Exhibit 4 is admitted without objection. And then the documents behind the decision in OAH case number 2016-100247, dated February 10, 2017. That's Exhibit 5. Ms. Mills, any objection?
No objection.
Exhibit 5 is admitted without objection. The certificate of license history is Exhibit 6. Ms. Mills, any objection?
No.
Exhibit 6 is admitted without objection. All right, anything else at this time? Ms. Heim.
At this time, I would read a summary of petitioner's discipline history with the board and her probation compliance.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Petitioner was issued an Associate Marriage and Family Therapist Registration, AMFT 51698, on September 12, 2006. On May 27, 2010, an accusation was filed against petitioner's registration based upon Business and Professions Code Section 4982, Subdivision C, due to petitioner's use and possession of controlled substances on November 1, 2009. Petitioner testified in response to the accusation on October 26, 2010, and acknowledged that she suffered from addictive disease and admitted that on November 15, 2009, she told officers that she previously had a drug problem. She testified that in order to address her drug and alcohol abuse, she'd recently enrolled in Kaiser's Chemical Dependency Rehabilitation Program in September 2010, the month prior to that hearing. She also admitted that she had relapsed 2 days prior to that hearing. The administrative law judge issued a proposed decision revoking her registration and ordering the petitioner to pay the board $2,130 for reasonable costs of investigation and enforcement of the case. The board adopted the decision effective January 26, 2011. Petitioner has no history of tolling, and on June 27, 2016, petitioner filed a petition for reinstatement of her registration. Petitioner's testimony was credible and convincing. She provided competent evidence to show that she was rehabilitated sufficiently, such that her registration was granted with a 5-year probation. Ms. Mills issued a condition precedent in that new registration was not issued until she was able to take and pass the California Law and Ethics examination described in Business and Professions Code Section 4980.399. Ms. Mills was issued Associate Marriage and Family Therapist Registration, AMFT 102522, and the probation effective date was October 11th, 2017. Petitioner is now requesting early termination of probation and is not represented by an attorney. Petitioner completed her psychological evaluation on January 2nd, 2018. No additional recommendations were made by the psychologist. Petitioner is fully compliant in providing psychotherapy quarterly reports. She's also fully compliant in the dependency support program, as well as the abstain from controlled substances and alcohol, submit to random drug testing condition. Petitioner is also fully compliant with the standard terms and conditions of her probation, including quarterly reports and reimbursement costs. At this time, I will reserve questioning until after petitioner's statement. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Heim. Ms. Mills, do you wish to testify on your own behalf?
Yes.
I'll have you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, you can feel free to say what you think the board needs to know when making a decision on your petition, keeping in mind that it has already had the opportunity to review the petition and is particularly interested in any rehabilitation. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi. I just wanted to say last time I was sat in front of all of you was back in 2016, and I remember all your faces, well, most of your faces, and down in Riverside, and I just want to say that turned out to be a really encouraging moment for me, despite the fact that I got caught in LA traffic and arrived late by a couple minutes. So you guys gave me a lot of encouragement to keep on the path that I had already established. And I did bring my chip today. I have a 7-year chip I got 2 weeks and a day ago. And all I can say at first is that without my sobriety, without my recovery, nothing's really possible for me. And I mean, I learned that through like years and years of trying to live with substances in my life. So I had to break up with that person thing. And true enough that since February 19th of 2013, my life has really blossomed and turned around, and I consider myself like fortunate, grateful. I'm happy, I'm happy. I don't think I ever really liked myself. I think I disliked myself to a great extent. And sometimes I think I even hated myself before I got clean. But I did try for many, many years to go different routes of harm reduction, substitution out of one substance into another. And you know, the first sign that I had a real problem was in 1997 when I got a DUI in Florida. And I did not learn my lesson at that time. I was introduced to AA and I thought it was interesting. I couldn't understand. I thought it was bizarre to have perfect strangers like hugging me and so forth after the meeting. But it was like it was a seed that was planted, you could say, after which it wasn't until 2002, after a lot of using drugs and alcohol from time to time when I lived in Chicago, I finally had enough and felt sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I contacted my family, and at that point in time, I relocated to California and went into a 30-day program at that time. So that's when I first learned that there is a solution and that I did have a disease, like that it is a disease, and genetic predisposition to it as well. And I successfully treated that for some time, but then things kind of fell apart a couple years later, and I was kind of off and on, in and out, off and on, 30, 60, 90 days clean or more for the next, what was like 2005 through 2013 when I finally arrived, or finally, I guess you could say, truly, really accepted that I'm an addict, an alcoholic. And there is something in the 12-step literature called the Promises, which talks about the good things that can happen from that point on when you fully, truly accepted that you're having this disease and that you need to treat it, and that's your responsibility and only your responsibility. And I found those promises to be coming true, you know. And I think I was partially in that, I was in that process of recovery at the time I last saw you. And at that time, I was still struggling a little bit with my mental health because I had experienced some traumas, like when I was out using. And since then, I've worked with a therapist and a psychiatrist. I was able to get off of psych meds. I no longer needed them. And I've basically surrounded myself with a home group in Sacramento here, and surrounded myself with people in recovery. I have been in service. I've secretaried meetings, and I work with a sponsor and work the 12 steps. I see the people I know in the meeting. We go out to breakfast sometimes. So I consider these people my friends and almost like a second family, really, because my biological family, they live in Florida, New Hampshire, and in the Bay Area, so I don't get to see them as often as I would like. But my family has healed, and recovery has been pretty amazing. So I just know that I have to continue to be responsible. Otherwise, if I let myself slide, I mean, relapse starts way before you pick up, I believe. It's a process. So if I were to, not take heed of the warning signs and stuff, the triggers and stuff like that, then I couldn't possibly maintain all the other aspects of my life that have kind of fallen together and fallen in place, you know? So I do feel that I've demonstrated that I'm safe to practice and that I've been rehabilitated. That's why I'm here today, is to seek early termination of probation. I will be continuing on with my meetings and my fellowship, and I'll be continuing on with therapy as well because I like to practice what I preach. And I think that's about it for the moment.
Ms. Heim, any questions?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
You mentioned a specific date, February 19th, 2013. Do you consider that your date of sobriety?
Yes, that's my sobriety date.
Thank you. And have you always had the same sponsor?
Yes, since my sobriety date, I've had the same sponsor. Yeah.
So right now, you're participating in therapy as part of a term of probation?
Yeah, it's twice a month now, and frequency was every week until a few months ago.
Okay. And you said you would intend to continue that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other support groups other than AA and the therapy that you currently participate in?
Yes. Thank you for asking. I actually have different communities that are important to me, and I do like to always make sure that I stay connected to those communities. And one of those is like the LGBT community, and the other is writing community, because I am a writer and a self-published author, and so some of that's like online community, but also the Sacramento Poetry Center. I sometimes do readings there. So that's a community that I'm part of. I was also part of like running community, because I was running marathons, but I stopped running marathons. But I still consider that a community as well for me. And then otherwise, it's just like the clinicians, who are my friends, who I see. That's the other community, I would say. So those 5 communities are really, I'm trying to make those grow and blossom, Before I got clean, I could say I didn't have any of those communities, Maybe AA if I wanted to walk into the doors, but it wasn't, I was the kind of person who would show up late and leave early, so.
Thank you. So you have the group support structures. Do you have, you don't have any family in the area, is that right?
My brother lives in the Bay Area, so I do have family in San Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you are faced with a stressful situation, do you have a plan in place right now or for the future that you would use?
Definitely. I guess it depends on what the stressful situation is. I mean,
something that might cause you to fall off the wagon, perhaps.
Right. Well, the good news is that at this point in my recovery, I can say I don't experience cravings like I may have really badly in the first year or two. There's never a moment that I'd say there's rarely a moment where anything looks appealing to me. It used to be that I would like walk by a Mexican restaurant and think I wanted a Cadillac margarita or something, and feel like, why can't I have that? Why can't I just be normal or something like that? But that's long since no longer an issue. I know I always play out the tape. I know where that's going to take me, where one drink is going to take me. There's all these cannabis shops right in Sacramento now and all over the place. So, one could argue that looks interesting, waxes, all these things that they offer and stuff. But nope, I know exactly where that's going to lead to as well, right? Because there were times in my life where I tried just smoking pot, and it always led back to harder or different drugs. So I can't do that. But yeah, I mean, a plan in place for stressful situations. Yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to figure out beforehand what I can do if I'm in a stressful situation. I mean, the coronavirus thing is real, right? I thought, what if this isn't going to meet today because they don't want to bring people together into a common space because it's getting that scary. And so I've been thinking about that. Like, am I going to let my fear run me into the ground? Because I'm the kind of person who could do that, you know? No, I'm not. Am I going to keep my eyes and ears open and think of who has a solution or successful strategies for what happens if somebody I know comes down with the coronavirus? You know, like, do I need to store food in my pantry if I have to self quarantine, right? Stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I'm always kind of just like thinking about what's happening to me internally based on external stressors and things.
Thank you. So other than managing the alcohol part, what kind of things are you doing for basic self-care?
Right now I'm doing hot yoga and I see a chiropractor just because I think all the running that I did, I don't know if it was to excess because like someone earlier said, sometimes your disease pops up in different areas of your life. But I only did 3 marathons over the course of 2 years, but I did start experiencing like some lower back problems. So I went to see the chiropractor and now I'm doing hot yoga. I have 2 cats who I love, who I spend time with one of them is like, I call him my spiritual guru because he just sits there on my bed. And so I can turn to my cats if I'm feeling stressed. I try to focus on like my diet. What am I eating? Am I drinking enough water, right? Because I still love to drink coffee in the morning. But if you drink coffee in the morning and then you chase it with Coca-Cola, you know, you're not going to feel good. I get stressed. And so drinking a lot of water. I try to be outdoors, you know, because I work indoors in an outpatient clinic. And so on my breaks, I try to get outside and walk around. When we went to lunch today, we went outdoors and got some sun, hiking, camping, whatever I can do. Occasionally watch a little Netflix, but not like overdo it, right? Because that's something where I would be the kind of person who would watch like an entire like 4-season show over the course of a weekend, right? So now it's like, no, like there's like a Malcolm X series. I only watched like the first 2 of the 4 episodes, whereas in the past, that would be impossible for me. I would have watched the whole Malcolm X thing and then I would have gone on to the next, right? So just like being moderate about it because you don't want to go into like escapism. Like if I go too far with it, I'm just going to try, you know, that's not the way I have to operate. I can't operate that way.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
All right, thank you. Any questions from board members? You want to start on my right this time?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Social justice.
It's really easy. I have no questions.
All right.
I have no questions, but I'm glad to see you again.
Oh, thank you. You too.
Thank you for coming. I'm struggling with the question because you clearly, I certainly remember you from a few years ago and glad to see you back. Has anything changed since we saw you last? You said that you were still struggling with some mental health issues and those feel like they've kind of been, you're addressing those. So what's the big difference between the last time we saw you and now?
Yeah. One thing I've had continued challenges with is just nightmares of past traumas. And sometimes that can interrupt my sleep, right? So what tends to happen is I just have to go to bed earlier and get up later because I have to leave time in the event that I'm going to have nightmares and be up in the middle of the night for a couple hours. Because I don't do well on, you know, less than 6 hours of sleep. So that's been a challenging one, you know, and I used to take a medication for that, and I don't anymore. But I am in conversation with my therapist about that. So that's one thing that just came to mind. My depression, I would say, has lifted more so than when it was as recovery's gone on. Just because I would have times where I just like wanted to stay home and isolate myself because I just felt safe. I felt safe in my home, and I also think that's related to trauma. So I can say that courage has become a big part of my life. Instead, opposite action. I do teach a DBT class, so I like that, trying to practice these skills like opposite action. You know, when fearful, if you check the facts and there's not a reason to be scared, you move into what you're trying to do, right? If I'm afraid to go to an event, and I look at that and I say that there's no reason to be afraid to go there, to some public event or a farmer's market, let's say, or something like that, or something at the park, a concert at the park. I've got to look at that and say, well, is there a threat? Is there a threat? If there's not a threat, then I need to find the courage to just go. So a lot of if you think of that change triangle, thoughts, feelings, behaviors, I'm pushing through the action, through the behaviors in order to change the thoughts and feelings. I've found that to be like a tried and true thing for me in the past couple of years, just like acting my way into a better thinking or feeling. But it's still there, like the urge to spend my entire weekend at home, right, where I feel safe. So I have to challenge myself. It's like there's not a day that goes by where I'm not feeling some part uncomfortable because I'm having to challenge myself, right? So, but social anxiety, I mean, it's not nearly the problem that it used to be, but it's still there. It's still there sometimes. Does that answer your question?
It does. It sounds like you've continued to do a lot of work. So you may have already answered this. Obviously, some of the supports that we put in place were, they're all for public protection, but they're also to really make sure that you have the supports that you need to get through the probationary process. I guess my question is, if those are gone, what will you continue to do? Which one are you going to continue to go to AA? Are you going to continue to go to therapy? Are you
Definitely, yeah. I really see my home group, and they're like my people. Like I go out to breakfast with the women like once a month, and I have a lot of phone numbers, and I stay after the meeting a lot, help clean up the meeting hall, and talk to people. These are people that are really important to me. If somebody needs like a favor or something, I will try to be there and help. And sponsor other women. I'm not sponsoring anybody currently, but so definitely that's a part of my life that I enjoy. I go to morning meetings, and I'd probably continue to go to like Saturday and Sunday morning meetings there, because to me that's like the best way I could possibly start my day on the weekends. So that would continue. Therapy, yes, I would continue. I feel pretty well connected with my therapist now that I've been seeing through this probation. So I would like to stay with him. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Different dynamic. We're just animals. We get used to everything. So good to see you here, Ms. Mills. Thank you so much for sharing. For us, it seems yesterday, but it's been a while. One question that I missed, I was trying to load my documents again. For some reason, it's not working. What was the actual termination of your probation set for in terms of years?
5 years.
But coming up, right? It will be 2 more years, right?
October will be
Doing it
3 years done, two to go.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. For some reason, my documents is not loading up again. But one thing that you didn't share, but it seems like you have you gain so much from the work you're doing, and it's visible. So the reason why of the early termination, I mean, we all imagine it's definitely not a walk in the woods. It takes a lot of effort, but it seems like you're enjoying these efforts in a way that it's not just now a constraint. You want to continue therapy. The AA is your second family. So what is, perhaps if you can elaborate a little bit more, the reasons of the early termination? What is the obstacles that's in front of you at the moment that you would like to remove?
Okay. I mean, one thing that I think happens, like when it comes to sponsoring somebody, is that people see me put my sheet into the basket. So that's like something that typically a newcomer is doing. So for me, it's been a humbling experience, obviously, because we only have, I mean, those of us who are addicts, alcoholics, we only have today. That's what we focus on, the 24 hours ahead. But I think it may deter people from maybe approaching me about sponsorship, because I would like to be in more in service and be able to sponsor more women. That's just one small aspect, I think, not having to get my meetings signed off. But like the others had said, I mean, I feel like I'm accountable for this. This was my fault. I got myself into this mess. So who am I to complain about it? However, I can agree with others that like these are daily phone calls for random talk screens, I just think they're not necessary any longer. Particularly because I don't have any desire to use or any cravings, but I would like to be able to afford to buy my own home or condominium in Sacramento. And as I watch the real estate market go higher and higher, it just seems like with the extra added costs that I have and some student debt, not having to pay that expense, that $400 to $500 a month for random screens, I might put myself in a better position to, get a landing pad, which I think would feel good, right? Because I've made Sacramento my home and I don't want to have to relocate again. I've relocated all my life. So
makes sense.
That's part of it.
No, thank you for answering this. Another question. Oh, now it's loading up. But I remember last time when you were here, we adjusted some of the. Did we do it? Okay, no, we didn't. So my question is, what will be? It seems like the testing will be one of the things that, in case we would like to revise the conditions of these terms beyond termination, would be perhaps that's the major obstacles that you're now referring to in regards to.
You mean like if it was switched to like a modification thing?
If there is a consideration in that regards, yes. Would that be?
That would be the number one thing I would want to have taken off.
Right. I know you are asking for termination, so I'm not trying to change that.
Also, like with job changing and stuff like that, I mean that an HR department is going to be presented with the probationary things, and I don't know if that's a barrier, but I've stayed at the company that I've stayed at, Turning Point, because I believe in the mission, and I've been doing well there, and I've been treated well, and I feel like that's a home. But if I wanted to explore other options, sometimes I feel like just wait, because having to submit all the probationary packet to the HR could be a barrier to my getting another position. But yeah, that would essentially be it.
Well, thank you. That will be it. Again, congratulations on your work. I saw that love letter from your employee. That was very speaking volume of your work, particularly the gender clinic. We all know how much that work is needed. So congratulations for volunteering and putting your time into that. So thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you again, too.
Thank you for being here and for sharing, and I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you.
2 comments and a question. One comment, I use the pronoun she, her, hers. I don't know if it's relevant for you, but we'll be referring to you elsewhere if you have different pronouns than we've already been using. Feel free to share them or not. Secondly, I recommend EMDR to help with those nightmares if you haven't tried EMDR, if you find the right therapist. So my question for you is this word escapism that you used kind of stood out for me. So of course, part of your addiction was escaping. And then you talk about Netflix and other ways in which you can escape, or escaping in your home for safety, or escaping because that's also kind of part of who you are. So where are you now with your escapism? I mean, I'm hearing some vigilance in terms of trying to avoid it, but are you still hungry for escape, I guess?
That's a really good question. And yeah, I do identify as non-binary, so my pronouns are she and they.
Thank you.
And so thank you for asking. And in regards to the escape thing, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like putting something into action tends to work when I feel that way. But do I feel like I want to escape in a lot of situations? Yes, I do. I haven't felt that way today, though, surprisingly. But maybe because I feel like I can be transparent. I don't have to hide here at all. So being more transparent when I can, when it's proper, when it's professional, helps eliminate that desire to escape, because I think a lot of that was like the way that I was talking to myself and stuff. I mean, internalized transphobia, right, would be a special word to say, but basically is just like, I grew up in a community where I didn't exist, right? So that was very painful, because when I finally came back to realizing who I was, like after I got clean the first time in 2002, I think the reason that my recovery didn't last very long at that point was because I saw myself in the mirror and I was like, that's the person that I was taught to hate, or that person couldn't exist, didn't have a place to be. So in my own family as well. So so I don't know if that's ever going to go away, but I think loving myself and being proud of my identity is like a really good potion that I can take. So affirmations, mantras, I do use those when I start feeling that way. And I just hate that feeling, but something I could probably take that topic up in therapy as well, though. So thank you.
Do you let yourself be loved other than the cats?
Yeah, I don't have a tough time taking a compliment for sure, and I love hugs, and yeah, I've got people that I'm close with and just feel like really connected to. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi again.
Hi. Nice to see you.
I do remember you. So the answer that you gave Dr. Brew pretty much answered, a lot of my questions, about, your self-hatred, your self-love. And, of course, maybe I can frame it, in a different way. Put it this way. So I want to finish my thought first. I think that, that I really see the growth that in you, that, from that change, when you were talking about, you recognize that, you still have that social anxiety and the depression, and you recognize how your family, really affected you. And recognizing that, that probably is going to be another major work for you to do in therapy. And I really want to commend you for that self-awareness. And I do encourage you to, to definitely take that action and apply the courage that you preach, right? Really to face that. But because I think that, when you really be able to, to deal with, the family trauma for so long, that affected you so long, I think you will be an amazing therapist. On the other hand, for this time, right now, I think we will be very interested in knowing, because your longest, you talked about your clean and sober time kind of go in and out. And now you have a 7 years chip, right? What kind of assurance that you can actually give us that, this, for this period of, for this episode of Clean and Sober will be sustained, and that you're safe to practice? I know it's hard because we don't have a crystal ball, but at the same time, I think it's important that, for the board member to hear that.
Yeah. Thank you. Nice to see you again. Well, I wake up in the morning and I want to get out of bed and I look forward to going to work. I have been promoted several times, and into supervisory roles, right? I had never been invited into management before. I didn't have to apply. My boss took me aside and said I was the therapist for the regional support team, which is like a 1,100 client strong outpatient clinic here in Thomas. And she said, we like what we see. We want you in management. Do you want to do that? These kinds of things never happened to me before, But I asked for some time to think about it, right? Because I've seen the stress that managers are under, and I've seen people talk about it like it's a thankless position. And I just thought, okay, is this something I can handle, right? So I would like to just describe the way in which my mindfulness works in my life, So I really can slow things down. And I'm also very good at doing this with my clients. Let's slow the process down. Let's take a few deep breaths. Let's think about our choices. Let's look at our values, right? And so what is going to be best in this particular situation? Let's not be self-centered, right? Prayer and meditation, I just do that every day, and I practice mindfulness, and I slow things down. I will turn the radio off on my car in my commute, despite the desire to listen to all the crazy news on a 20-minute drive each way. I will turn it off on purpose if I'm feeling like I'm getting that alert signal that something's maybe wrong. So this is a practice. Mindfulness is a practice. It needs to be cultivated, and I enjoy cultivating it. But it's getting me out of trouble all the time because I'm able to see things before they actually arise, or as they arise, and make some real conscious decisions, And that's not to say that I don't have days where I'm feeling stressed out, overwhelmed, and I've got like the squirrels running through my head chattering, right? Those days are going to happen. So those are times where self-care has to become a priority. I have to actually do something about it. So I would say safe to practice in some ways. The proof is in the fact that I've continued to develop as a clinician. I've gone to these trainings. I've been going to, upwards of 5 hours of supervision a week, because I get sometimes 2 hours of group at both sites, the Gender Health Center and Turning Point, and then sometimes a triad or individual on top of that. So 5 hours a week, but really more like 3 hours a week now, because I've got group and then a triad. So 3 hours a week is more typical now. But people around me, and that's why I wanted my clinical supervisors' letters to be in there to portray something that I can't rightly portray to you myself, other than just my being here, So I would say some of the evidence there would speak to my safety to practice. And I do feel like I'm able to, this is a real hard one, but like a lot of people I admire in recovery are able to actually, like when it came to like the promotion thing, do you want to be a manager? So now I've been a supervisor for almost a year and it's killing me. I mean, it's like, it's great, but it's like, it's an added level of stress, right? And so I've had to adjust to that. That's why the yoga practice too, because I think the back pain was related to the stress, and so the yoga practice is my new thing to address that. But it's been a little bit of extra stress, and it's been uncomfortable, and I've been growing and learning. But some people in recovery are just like, if I feel like that's going to be too much, I'm actually going to decline the promotion. I'm not going to take the extra money. I'm not going to take the commendation. I'm going to do what's right because recovery is number one up here. And I would like to sit here in front of you and tell you that I'm there. But, it's a work in progress. So I can't 100% say so. But I believe that I'm making the right choices day by day.
So learning to sit with that discomfort of unknown, uncertainty, whether what I should do, that is actually a very important practice, not only for, us teaching the client to do, but also a practice for ourselves. So, especially, you need to learn to calm your fight or flight, trauma brain, and that is a really important step, to stop yourself from going down to that avalanche. Right. So, wonderful. Thank you very much. And again, I just want to appreciate, how much you have grown, since 2016 that we saw you last time.
Yeah. Thank you.
I don't have any questions for you. I just wanted to let you know that I sitting here and listening to you, I've really found your testimony to be very transparent, honest, credible. And I just want to say I appreciate you being so forthright with us. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Hi, I just want to say thank you for coming in today. It has been a delight listening to you. I was not here in 2016. And so just to hear sort of how you have and how you are building your life, the books you've written, the AIDS cycle rides you've been on, just the way you volunteer and give yourself away in service to others is tremendously commendable. And I also want to commend you for your 7-year chip. That is something to be cherished and to be applauded. So it has just been wonderful sitting here listening to you. And you actually did sort of address the one or two questions that I had as you began to spoke to sort of your experience with managing your own self-rejection. That sort of, I'm sure, started in your environment and you just internalized it and you've been managing that. That can be something, that can be a very stubborn sort of cognition and sort of emotional sort of reaction to life to just sort of understand and manage. So it sounds like you're doing a fantastic job with that. On another note, I just want to say something interesting. So about managing and supervising people, that can be like herding cats. So so just be aware that is what it is. It's, it is herding cats, and that is not going to change. But the one question I did have in the midst of all of this is that you have mentioned that you've had a sponsor for the past 7 years, but I haven't really heard you talk about that person much or at all. And it could be that you are far enough along in your recovery that, and you clearly are demonstrating tremendous insight, tremendous ability to reflectively plan and course correct for situations that arise. But could you speak to the relationship with your sponsor and how that person supports sort of day-to-day realities that exist for you?
Yeah, and thank you so much. My sponsor just moved to Oregon, to Salem, Oregon, I think it is, or the capital of Oregon, whatever, Salem, yeah. So she jumped from one capital city to another. That was like 3 weeks ago. So we're still in touch by phone and text. In the last 2 years, my sponsor's been, because she's retired now and she's loving life, so she's been traveling all around the world, really, with her husband. So I haven't had as much contact as I would want with her. I mean, but she was integral, you know, in the earlier years of my recovery, working the steps. We worked the steps basically 2 times over, and from beginning to end. These days, it's more like, and we used to meet for coffee every week, and then it was every other week, and then it was once a month, and then it was whenever we're both available to meet. Sometimes we'd go to a meeting together. She and I are 2 different personalities for sure, and she's, you know, she's been a thorn in my side at times, you know, telling me things that I don't necessarily want to hear, but that's part of the job, right? The sponsor is going to point out things that you don't necessarily always see. So she helped a lot with blind spots, I think, back in the day. But as of lately, now that she's moved to Salem, Oregon, she told me, you know, that I could go ahead and look for another sponsor. And there are women that I talk to probably more frequently than her in recovery. So I'm out there looking to see if I might want to work with someone else, you know. But yeah, she was awesome. I mean, she was there for me like a mom when my mom wasn't around, you know, in recovery, that is. So it was a critical part of my recovery to have her. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again. It was just wonderful hearing your story, and I wish you well. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from any other board members? Seeing none. Ms. Heim, any additional questions?
No, thank you.
Ms. Mills, do you have anything additional you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
All right. In a moment, then, I'm going to ask whether the matter is submitted. And by that, I mean, are you satisfied that you've had a full opportunity to present all documents and make all argument on your behalf? Ms. Heim, is the matter submitted?
Yes, submitted.
Ms. Mills, is the matter submitted?
Yes.
All right. The matter is submitted. The case is closed, and we are off the record. Let's take a 10-minute break. We're going to take a 10-minute break. You're free to go after you get a document from the court reporter and a copy of the protective order.